Hello and welcome to St Peter Mancroft, to those of you here and those of you watching online. I'm Fiona Haworth, the Associate Priest. This is part of our series of live-streamed reflections from Mancroft, and if you're visiting the church, please feel free to continue looking around. Today is May Day, also known in many countries as International Workers' Day or Labour Day. This is a celebration of labourers and the working classes promoted by the international labour movement. It began in support of working class demands for an 8-hour day, a social movement to regulate the length of a working day, preventing excesses and abuses of working time. I was surprised to discover that the 8-hour workday originated over 500 years ago. In 1593, Spain became the first country to introduce the 8-hour workday by law for factory and fortification workers. The modern movement originated during the Industrial Revolution in Britain, where industrial production in large factories transformed working life. At that time, the working day could range from 10 to 16 hours. The work week was typically 6 days, and child labour was common. The move for an 8-hour workday in Britain began with the reformist textile manufacturer, Robert Owen. Initially, Owen called for a 10-hour workday in 1810, but by 1817 he had formulated the goal of the 8-hour day, and he coined the slogan, 8 hours labour, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. But it was not until the Factories Act of 1847 that women and children in England were granted the 10-hour day. French workers won the right to a 12-hour day after the February Revolution of 1848. The demand for change spread to the United States during the Long Depression, a worldwide economic recession which began in 1873 and lasted for several years. Prior to the Long Depression, the United States had experienced strong economic growth fueled by the Second Industrial Revolution in the decade following the American Civil War. Chicago was a major industrial centre, and tens of thousands of German and Bohemian immigrants were employed at about $1.50 a day. American workers worked on average slightly over 60 hours during a 6-day work week. Chicago became a centre of attempts to organise for better working conditions. Employers responded with anti-union measures such as firing and blacklisting union members, locking out workers, recruiting strike breakers, employing spies, thugs, and private security forces, and exacerbating ethnic tensions in order to divide the workers. Business interests were supported by mainstream newspapers and were opposed by the Labour and immigrant press. The 1st of May was chosen to mark International Workers' Day by the American Federation of Labour to commemorate a general strike in the United States, which began on the 1st of May in 1886. 3 days later, police attempting to break up a rally in support of workers striking for an 8-hour day opened fire and killed 2. In response, a rally was called for the next day. It began peacefully, but during the day, a bomb was thrown at the police as they intervened. The police opened fire, and 7 police officers and at least 4 civilians were killed, with many injured. A harsh clampdown followed, and workers continued to endure workdays of 10 hours and more. In the the light of this struggle, it is informative to reread the parable of the workers in the vineyard. In it, Jesus tells of a landowner who recruits labourers to work in his vineyard, promising to pay them a day's wage for their labour over 12 hours. 3 hours later, he recruits more labourers, promising to pay what is right. He does the same 3 hours later and 3 hours after that. Then, with only an hour of the working day left, he recruits more workers, promising to pay what is right. When the workers line up to receive their pay, the landowner starts with the most recently employed and pays them a day's wage. He pays a day's wage to each group. The labourers who worked through the heat of the day are understandably angry by this, and they protest. The landowner tells one of them, presumably the most forceful in his complaints, that he is doing what he agreed to do and can choose to spend his money how he likes. Having identified the people prepared to stand up and argue for what is right, the ringleader is told to leave. He will no doubt have been blacklisted and struggle to find work elsewhere. The fate of landless peasants at the time was typically a slow death by starvation. Typically, this parable has been read as a way of marking the generosity of the landowner. But we can also read it as Jesus holding up a mirror to society and acknowledging the injustice inherent in the system, allowing working people to know that their struggles are seen by God. Since the 19th century, unions have fought for the protection of workers. The campaigning of unions has contributed to better terms and conditions, paid holidays, paid sick leave, paid parental leave, and higher wages. We now take many of these rights for granted. It would be unthinkable now to expect people to work for more than 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, without adequately compensating them. Yet worldwide, hard-won workers' rights are under threat. In 1955, the Roman Catholic Church responded to International Workers' Day by designating the 1st of May as a feast day for St. Joseph the Worker. St. Joseph, the carpenter and foster father of Jesus, is seen as a model of the dignity of human work. Work is an old calling. Beginning with the story of creation, human work has been celebrated as a participation in the creative work of God. It is through work that humankind fulfills the command found in Genesis to care for the earth and to be productive. A prayer to end. Loving God, creator of all that is, you call us to use our gifts and skills in the service of all. May we, like Joseph, be faithful in the work you have called us to. We ask this through Jesus Christ. Amen.